Let's start over. So, today I'm joined here by the distinguished researchers that form the panel, bringing together their diverse expertise and insights to address important matters impacting our society. The table is composed by Dr. Murthy Balahamudi, Dr. Mariam Imani, Dr. Venerando Amaro, and Dr. Wilson Cabral, which will provide valuable insights and expertise in their respective fields. Without further ado, let us begin this engaging session. Our first presenter will be Dr. Mariam Imani, a distinguished civil engineering and associate professor of water systems engineering at Anglia Ruskin University. Dr. Imani's research interests revolve around water infrastructure resilience, sustainable drainage system, and the application of technology in the field. Today, she will enlighten us on the fundamental principles of infrastructure resilience, highlighting the need for their integration into infrastructure management practices. Dr. Imani will explore infrastructure interdependency, focusing on the interconnectedness of water, energy, and transportation infrastructure. Let us welcome Dr. Mariam Imani to share her valuable insights with us. Thank you, Dr. Mariam.
Thank you, Rama. Oh, thank you. Hello again. Good afternoon. Very interesting conversation just before that. Colleagues talked about different shocks and stresses in urban area. Can you hear me? Usually, when you're a teacher, you're loud. I am loud, so I'm sure the floor can hear me. Yes, correct. So I would like to step back. My discussions here are not going to be very technical, although they have technical aspects inside. But more of an overview and experience on the projects I've been involved on infrastructure, which is my favorite subject, and concept of resiliency that nowadays is becoming, well, if I may I'm allowed to say so, is like a buzzword these days that is used across different disciplines, basically, when it comes to tackling different shocks caused by either it has human reasons or is made by the nature. So we call them shocks or threats. Or stresses, basically, that they happen gradually over time. We may not even notice it, but we live with the consequences of that. Can we move on to the next slide? I try to talk abstract about the content of the slum. I'm conscious of time. So a glimpse of what you can see here is known to pretty much everybody, and the list goes on and on. We have lived some of these, and we have seen some of these, and we have heard about all of these disasters that you see a glimpse of them here. Perhaps the one on the right is the one you all, I'm sure, have heard in the news about the latest damage to the dam in Ukraine. Caused significant impacts on the livelihood of the people who live in upstream, and not just upstream as well. The consequences that this nation is going to live for months and years, perhaps. So a dam broke, so large volume of water, not fully even, partially at the moment, volume of water is flowing downstream. What is causing is obviously flooding is the immediate impact of it. What's being flooded even is more important because it's not just the people who are living there, but the businesses, like a massive agricultural area in downstream, is going to hit the food chain, okay? The dam is a hydroelectric dam. It provides energy to energy system. So it's gonna hit or cause some power outages or power shortages. And now you can imagine the businesses, people who are living with this power supply, they're going to be impacted. The next thing is the water shortage. A lot of people downstream are living on the supply of water from this resource. And what's going to happen with this water shortage is that, well, public health implications, the first thing you can think about, or sanitation issues, depending on what population, what percentage of the population living that. And if it's the nation is already under stress, you can imagine what sort of consequences they're going to face. The other issue, and perhaps this is the most serious one, you've heard about the nuclear power plant in downstream that lives on the supply of water by this dam for the cooling system. And if it's not going to get enough water in coming days for cooling down, then the impacts you can imagine. A nuclear power plant without a cooling system. I hope they're not going to get there. But if that happens, you can imagine. I'm going to touch base on this aspect in coming slide. That's my favorite topics when it comes to infrastructure, which goes about infrastructure interdependencies, interconnections, and the cascading impacts. Can we go to the next slide? How many of you in this room have been involved in resilience-driven projects one way or another, either as a design, as a strategy, operation? Has anybody in the room has been involved in it? Fantastic. Okay, great. I would like to go back to some principles about it. Because this is how my career started with this concept. Stepping back, a number of terminologies, we need to get it right when we study about resilience. Okay? Otherwise, you're interchangeably with risk, with reliability, with robustness, you are using that. There are certain things that need to exist that you call it as a resilience strategy. And I should say that resiliency is a journey. It's not a destination. It's not where you get there and you say, I'm resilient. No. We live in a dynamic environment. And I think previous speakers did mention, and they challenged about the return period. Absolutely true. This is going to change over time, and we need to live with that. So going back to a lot of definitions about resilience, you have different types of resilience. Again, I'm an engineer. I'm interested in the engineering aspect of it. I would cautiously approach that because, again, it can be defined in ecology, it can be defined in social science. And let's skip that part. I'm sure you can read that yourself. But what is important when it comes to resilience is that the scale of it. And the simple question that resilience of what to what? And again, it's important, are you looking at an individual level? Are you looking at it as a household level, at the community level? Is it infrastructure level? Is it a regional level? Is it a country level? Even you can look at it internationally. So it's important we get these principles right. And the graph you see at the bottom left, again, if you look into this graph, is a simple graph. You can draw this graph, the performance of the system against time. And that, again, the system can be an individual, could be an engineering system. You should be able to establish, and there are certain attributes to this graph. If you want to apply it in a more of a contextualize that, you should be able to develop that graph. But we don't want to go into nitty-gritty of that. We can discuss about it later. Can we go to the next? This graph basically contains the aspects of resilience if you want to look at it at a system level. And again, you can be translated. It's simple. In this circle, you've got the threat at the top. It could be a shock, it could be a stress, could be both, it could be a connected thing. And it's important, again, when you are dealing with resilience, you ask yourself about it. What sort of event I am looking at? Then you've got a system. The system, again, as I said, could be an infrastructure, could be one system, could be a combination of several systems, could be individual, could be community, could be all of them. Then you've got the impact of that threat that is affecting that system. And then the consequence of that impact. Those consequences could be social, environmental, and regulation. And it's important in this resilience approach, we make a distinction between an impact and a consequence that usually is interchangeably used. And in those intersections, you see all those interventions that, again, we can define them about mitigation and adaptation. Usually they are used interchangeably, but if you want to look at it in a systematic way, you need to make a distinction between the two. And the coping and learning mechanisms that embed those social community aspects at the heart of it. We engineers, whatever we design, whatever we do, if people, communities are not able to use them effectively, basically you haven't designed it at all, right? So you need to make sure it's going to work. So the pictures I have put, try to formulate that was around one of the Toddbrook Reservoir in the UK. A few years ago, I think 21, they faced some problems that a part of the dam spillways of the dam damaged, partly, obviously a panic in the community, that at any day it can be washed off, the downstream community was evacuated. And the bottom line of it was, it's still under investigation, that one of the human reasons for that is the poor inspection during the period of the maintenance and inspection contributed. Plus, a lot of heavy rainfall and the pressure behind the tap led to this, that of course, if they had closely monitored that, they would have seen that the plants growing on the spillways is not a good sign of it. And then you need to live with that. Longest story short, gets to the learning process, the government realizes that they need to put money into this. But instead of being reactive, you could be more proactive about it. And this is where the resilience story starts. Can we go to the next slide? You can press, and it does have animation. I should have skipped that. I will touch base on that and I move on. I'm conscious of time. Something that is, when it comes to infrastructure management, is the concept of risk management and risk assessment. Risk concept is a well-established concept in this area. Even if you talk to practitioners, regulatory bodies, they are very familiar with the concept around risk. And risk, traditionally, you've seen this risk matrix, impact versus probability. So, and of course, a third dimension has been added to that, which is the vulnerability. If you decide to live and build your house and make it a perfect building, well designed in an area which is a floodplain area, you are vulnerable. So there is no question about it. So they try to improve the risk, probability, impact, and by putting vulnerability in it. But reality is that risk has been built around the events that you can predict their probability. What happens when you get that black swan event? So, and the idea is that, yes, that black swan event, although the probability is very low, but when it happens, especially if you are vulnerable, the impact is going to be devastating. So the idea is that resilience lives around this side, and in fact, it complements risk. So risk alone, as we move forward, is good enough for low probability events. But if you want to deal with the high probability event, but if you want to live with low probability event, you need a resilience strategy that has been planned systematically. Sorry, can we move on? So this is where I put it. I call it resilience puzzle, because I'm very much a fan of puzzle myself, but then the list goes on. But if you want to design a resilience system, or you want to implement resiliency strategies into that, several factors need to be considered. And it's not just engineers' job. It requires a multidisciplinary approach. And some of the facts I have touched based here, again, based on that systematic formulation of resilience I showed you, and beyond that. So it's cost, budget, learning definitely is at the heart of that. It needs a holistic approach, and it needs technology, obviously, and it needs people and community at the heart of it. Can we move on? So I'm sure you all know about 100 Resilient Cities project, founded by Rockefeller Foundation. In Brazil, I think, as far as I'm aware, you had 3 case studies as part of this project, that they came up with some key characteristics for urban resilience, basically, in an urban area. And those characteristics, in fact, embeds infrastructure. That, like, a resilient city needs to be reflective, needs to be resourceful, needs to have a spare capacity in the form of redundancy, needs to be robust, it needs to be integrated, it needs to be flexible. Flexibility is very important when you live around uncertainty, and needs to include everybody. Is inclusiveness. Can we move on? Yes. And very quickly on the concept of interdependency. Infrastructure, and we are living in a very connected societies. Infrastructures are the same. They're not working in isolation. They're heavily relying on each other. And it is a super complex problem. Studying about these interconnections and interdependencies is super complex. And I can't tell you enough that how much the operators or each sector knows less and less about how much relying on their interdependent systems, basically. Again, I mentioned about the example of the dam in Ukraine, but think about all the disasters happened around the world and how other infrastructures affected and how they are connected. This interconnectedness is not well understood. How can you plan around it? Okay, move on. The only thing I would like to mention here is that National Infrastructure Commission is just the UK perspective. National Infrastructure Commission in the UK, they have published usually a resilience strategy around that, setting some vision for the nation, how they move forward, and then they assess at what situation general infrastructure systems in the UK are, and they propose strategies about it. Something they have mentioned, and I think it's worth mentioning, and this is something that can be adopted pretty much in any sector or anywhere in the world, that again, anticipation should be at the heart of it. We shouldn't be living or planning reactively. This needs a proactive approach, and this is where anticipation comes. And be open about your weaknesses. That's a truth, and learn to live with this uncomfortable truth. Resist, absorb, and recover, again, going back to that graph, are important aspect of that. And always, always, always test for your vulnerabilities. There are always vulnerabilities, and this is something that needs to be monitored constantly. Adapt and transform. Again, in your resilience strategy, adaptation is at the heart of it, which is exactly the subject of this conference. Is very important. And be ready where transformation is needed. Be ready to do that. Again, technology is changing, the world is changing. And if infrastructure can't live a stationary life, so if you need to transform, please do that. And again, resilience needs to be valued properly. Can we move on? 4 ways proposed by UK National Infrastructure and also by Institution of Civil Engineers. Again, part of, I would suggest, you may want to take a look. Resilience Shift project, moved to, is called now Resilience Rising, is a global project, basically, that it tries to look into this resilience concept for all the infrastructure around the globe. And again, 4 things they recommended is an international coalition. Making adaptation reporting power mandatory in your infrastructure sector. Better understanding of the systems, their connection and their weaknesses. Invest in the economy of resilience. This should come as part of the budgeting, not as a complementary thing that if they've got a budget left from someone, no, let's put it into resilience. And use technology for better to make a difference. Can we move to the next slide? Again, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, around 38 countries are a member of it. Again, and this is the common message around, again, for the sustainable and resilient infrastructure. Again, invest in sustainable and quality infrastructure. Natural capital or natural system needs to be part of it. Again, this is a new thing that green infrastructure needs to come in where they are needed. Again, they need to be transformative. Quality infrastructure, again, is a key part of sustainability, and infrastructure system can't be resilient if they are poorly maintained. Maintenance is super important. You mentioned about return period issue, but if poor maintenance is factored in, I'm sure the time spent is going to be even shorter than that. Can we move on to I think that's the final step. We can skip this slide, possibly. I'm conscious of them, and that's the, again, achieving resilience requires several factors. Some of them you can see about asset operators or infrastructure operators, factor in social factors, factor in technology, environmental factors, economic factors, aged infrastructure or aged asset or deterioration process needs to be factored in. External threats, all those interconnections needs to be factored, and then how much resources you have available. Certain barriers have been mentioned and how to plan for longer term resilience, but I'm happy to share the slides later. Again, I'm conscious of time. And as a last thing, the project we did in collaboration with the Scottish Water, Transport Scotland, and SSE, between UK, case study in Scotland for between water, energy, and transport sector. We looked into interdependency of sector, and it's an interesting concept how data sharing is a big issue, how two big utility sector living two sides of a road, and they never talk about that interdependent assets. If my asset went wrong, supplies energy to water sector. If asset failed, how I'm going to prioritize the maintenance of that? If that asset is providing essential services to the sectors of the other utility sector. They're not talking necessarily to each other. So it's not sometimes a matter of lack of willingness, but is about uncertainty, and they don't know how to do it. And this is exactly the mission of the researchers and those that they are in this space, to give them evidence and make them aware that they feel comfortable to approach a challenge. And I think we can skip the rest, because it was a showcase of the project we did. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a tool we developed to do that. We can skip that. I think pretty much that's it from me. I'm sure during the lunch we can have a chat about it. Thank you.
So our second presenter will be Dr. Venerando Amaro. He's a full professor at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte. Dr. Amaro is a renowned researcher specializing in geoscience, geophysics, and applied geotechnologies. Today, Dr. Amaro will shed light on the effects of climate change on coastal cities in Rio Grande do Norte, northeast Brazil. His expertise lies in areas of risk analysis, environmental monitoring, and coastal and statuine areas. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Venerando Amaro.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank a lot the organization, Renato, Ana Paula. It's an honor to be here. It's a really good moment for me to be among many people who I knew since a long time. And it's a pleasure for me to share with you some aspects. It's a brief overlook about, I will change a little bit this stuff, but I will try to concern a little bit about the coastal cities, but dealing mostly with erosional problems. We're going to see that. I was wondering if it's interesting to talk about flooding inside the cities, but Pedro talked a lot about that, and both things are related. And for me, it's important at this time to take advantage of the group reunited here to discuss a little bit about this situation that we can find all around the cities, coastal cities, but I will focus a little bit more on the coastal cities of Rio Grande do Norte. When we talk about climate change, it's very known from everybody, the causes of these climate changes related to the coastal zone, related to coastal areas. We talk about the sea level fluctuation, we talk about tides, and they are changing, and they are geographically as well changed, related from south to north, from tropical areas to equatorial areas. We can talk about rainfall as well, who is involved in the disasters that happen over there also. And I would like to include some kind of anthropogenic decisions, because all these causes related to climate changes, they are related as well for the decisions to try to solve the situation that we can find. The hazard everybody knows about these waves arriving with a very high energy, the lack of sediment supply in some areas because of, for instance, in the northeast Brazil, we have a huge drawn on the center part, on the interior, and we have all the rivers dam. So we have sediment supply, very poor sediment supply on the coastal areas. And we talk a little bit about waves. After that, we can discuss about erosion and the relation erosion to inundation, because it's important to realize it. Plenty of stakeholders don't realize that that when we lost some parts of the continent, we are putting the ocean over them. So it's occupied by the ocean. So it's important for us, related to coastal cities, that we are dealing with both things together. And it's a challenge for us to think about that, because people are trying to solve with some engineering infrastructure, some decisions are to solve the coastal erosion. But we can cause some coastal inundation as well, because we can avoid the water and we keep the water inside the area. So it's something that we can think about it so much. This is a graphic relating erosion hazard, for instance, and flooding hazard. And they were determined by some kind of geological situation, geographic situation. And I can assure you that the coastal zone of Rio Grande do Norte is on the top of both. So we have those situations. We have soft rock cliffs in the coastal area. In front of this soft rock cliffs, we have sand beaches that are completely in erosion. And we have low-lying sand areas. I will show you some pictures related to that. So for us, it's a natural laboratory to work on these kind of situations that we can find. This is the Rio Grande do Norte. Pedro showed us already. It's in the corner of South America. And on the northern part, we have this kind of dunes with very low sea cliffs. Some of these sea cliffs are not involved straight to the waves. But we have some mangrove systems. It's covered by this bar, unfortunately, because it's a very nice view, with sand barrier islands that are moving. Some places we can calculate 1 kilometer per year. This northern part of Rio Grande do Norte is totally important for the whole economic situation of the state, because here is concentrated the oil exploration. Right now we have these wind farms concentrated here. And as well, you can see that the rivers arriving over there, dammed in some places. And the photovoltaic, the solar energy as well, is concentrated on that area. So inland, we have this semi-arid, what we call Caatinga. That's why we have all the rivers that are coming from that place dammed in some parts. And so we arrived here in this coastal area that I called western littoral of Rio Grande do Norte, totally different from the northern part, probably because we are the last states to be a little bit put it apart from the Africa in the historic geology. So this area is totally different from this area concerning geologically speaking, and also related to the energy, because we are closer to equatorial area. So on this area here, we have Natal, the main city, and the Natal main region concerning plenty of other small cities that lived around Natal. And we have beautiful beaches, with sand beaches in front of cliffs, 5-star hotels all around behind that. And here is the most important place nowadays for tourism economy. It's Pipa. It's considered the best place to go in the whole Rio Grande do Norte state, that is constructed over cliffs, like that. Cliffs with softy kind of rocks. In front of it, we had before some sand beaches, but right now we have the waves transferring the whole energy to the base of these cliffs, and we have landslides with people dying. And here is a little bit for try to give you an idea that's how important it is to face this area concerning coastal cities. We have the main urban areas in red. From 84 to 2018, we are planning for instance, it's around 3.6, 3.5 million people in the whole state, but half part of these people are living here. So it's important for us to face this situation. Concerning a little bit about this whole energy involved in this area, I would like to show you that we are facing a mesotidal regime. It means that the amplitude of the tide is around 2 to 3 meters from the low tide to high tide. So think about the waves and the tide arriving on this coastal area with flat-lying terrains and with cliffs with soft material. Here we can find the waves that are mostly from southeast, east, southeast, but with high energy arriving. It's quite like 2 to 2.5. This is the high, significant height of the waves that we can add to the tide to think about this situation. And here are the winds. But one thing that I would like to show you, I will not talk about where are coming from this data, but it's from ERA 5, WaveWatch 3, and everybody knows this database, and VISO for winds. And what we are having here, we are having some kind of changing of the direction and the intensity of the whole energy arriving on this coastal area because of the climate change. So if we need to decide what kind of engineering solution we would like to construct to save this area, we need to think about this changing, because what we are listening to from Dr. Marian, it's something that is very dynamic. But it's not in this case that I will show you, it's not what is going to happen to our case study that is Natal Ponta Negra Beach. So here it's just to show you a little bit the change of the high wave amplitude from, I don't know, 10 years around, and the time that they are arriving on the coast are becoming lower, and the direction is changing. So for us, it's very interesting to see this. And I would like to add on this discussion a little bit about the sea level change. I mean, the sea level global is concerning a little bit 3.3, but on this area, we are expecting 3.7 to 5.7 millimeters per year. So we are putting the ocean a little bit higher and higher with much more energy to arrive on this area. So this is all the data were calculated. And here I will add to Pedro's disastrous events in Natal, I will add some coastal disaster, because Pedro showed us some related to extreme precipitation events. But here I would like to show some interesting stuff that in many of that cases that Pedro showed us, data related, we have some coastal erosion and we have some disaster on the coastal area. So we have at the same time the extreme events precipitation causing flooding inside the city, but on the coastal area we are facing coastal flood, spray overtopping, block overtopping on these hills, cliffs, and seaside bulk collapsed in many places. All around, here you can see all of them are related to the same date that are here in the table. So you can see the war situation that we can face time to time related to this. Here, it's some information about the erosional situation of this area. All I do have here in red here is related to some cities, some geographically related to some important places, and we have erosion arriving. This is from 84 to 2020, we have around 1.5 meters per year of erosion on these beaches and cliffs. All this area here are a little bit around, but I will talk about Ponta Negra region. This is Ponta Negra in 2012. This is a kind of engineering solution to avoid the waves to arrive on the behind the seaside it's not here, but we have this sidewalk side behind this beach. This is some kind of sewer arriving on this face of the beach. So we have plenty of situations that are asking us, are we right or not to have these structures there? Look at these houses arriving closer to the beach. Look at this situation here closer to the border of the cliff. So is what we have since long time ago, but what we realized, it's from 88 to 98, we have some kind of equilibrium. Everything was quite good. But from the 20s, no, it's around 2000 here, we have the increasing of the erosion situation on all these areas. So here is from 10, a decade here. And we can see that the people are trying to solve the situation with this kind of engineering solution. We have embankments, we have rock fill, we have some kind of, I don't know, people are trying to solve their properties with some kind of retaining walls. Everything mixed without any kind of orientation from the government. So people are trying to save their properties. It's so cool. But we're still having, from 2007 here, is Ponta Negra region, we're still having this kind of situation that's facing the erosion is still happening. And for us, the mean erosion rate for this area is around 1.15 meters per year. But I will skip this before. Right now, we can have some information on this area here, that is Ponta Negra region. Here is Morro do Carecas, very well touristic, very well-known touristic situation. And we have, from the last, I don't know, 8 years, an increasing of erosion with this kind of engineering infrastructure that were installed to solve the erosion. So they are becoming stronger and stronger each year. So right now, we have 1.15. Right now, we have 1.35 meters per year of beach erosion. So after all this information, they tried to solve the situation again. And now we are waiting for some kind of beach replenishment, or what we call beach nourishment. So this is Ponta Negra. We are looking here in the plan. And here we are facing a little bit in perspective. So for the high tide, they are planning to have the shore face here, all this area that were not touched by the sea, with 30 meters. And in the low tide, this beach here will be of 100 meters. That's cool. We have the beach back. Okay, we have the tourism economy very well, they are agreeing with us. But we have still having some problems, because on this area here, for instance, we have a group of fisher people. They don't know how to deal with these guys. Right now, because they are facing this kind of situation here. They don't know where to put their boats. They are living with this kind of drainage system arriving straight to the face of the beach. Most of them with gray water, and sometimes with sewer together. And for the future, you can imagine a guy who have, I don't know, 20 meters of sand to cross, to put their boats over here, protected from the waves. And you can imagine the future if the guy has to put this boat 10 meters a little bit further. So the guys were a little bit not so happy, say. So to finish, I would like to show you some kind of engineering solutions related mostly to hardening structures. It's structures that were prepared just to save the constructions that were behind the beach. The first time we discussed about beach replenishment was in 2012, and it were totally unaccepted for the people because of the price of that. And we start at that time to discuss, it's better to replace a little bit the sand and to try to think about what to do with this beach, integrating both systems. I mean, the situation that we have losing the beach in front of the structure, and also to protect the constructions behind the structure. So it was avoid, people decided to use rock fill over there. Here is some kind of concrete monoblock, straight like that. I don't know if you know, when the wave arrives in places like that, this is a retaining wall. When the wave is like a hand that do that, you can imagine this. So the sand is totally moved to the sea and transported to the north, because I forgot to show you that all the transportation, longshore transportation of the sediments are from south to the north because of the structure, the geographic structure, and because of these winds that are coming from the southeast. And we still have some kind of situations like that to solve, because here it was used to give to people access to the beach. But during the precipitation events, all this area is conducting the flux through the beach and extracting the sediment from the beach and put it on the, eroding the beach, I mean. People who is living there are doing the same stuff here. Taking their water and conducting the water straight to the beach. And this is just eu posso dar aqui, desculpa. A click. This is the solution after, I don't know, 12 years from the contractors who are making this kind of situation here. And they are trying to say that this is the solution for the flux of the water from the continent, I mean the pluvial water arriving on the beach to reduce the energy of the flux of the water. But this is still be conducted to the face of the beach and is still eroding the face of the beach. So this is the situation. It's a challenge for us to think about how to deal with some kind of decisions, because people are trying to do their jobs, but they are not well organized. And this is a problem for me. That's why I would like to take advantage of this event, to think about how can we do with this kind of flux straight to the water. Because of that, I would just go back here and finish with this. This pluvial shear here is this one here. So we can calculate how the amount of the sand that's going out of the beach, and they're still there. We have 36 of this kind of sewer arriving straight to the beach, some of them with gray water, and they are eroding the beach. So we're gonna buy, at the price of gold, some sand to put on this beach, and we keep this, this sewer here. So it's not interesting, it's stupid. So we would like to think about the possibility to maintain the water that came from the pluvial events inside the continent. This is a first idea. We need to keep this, not to throw it straight to the beach. And this is the situation that we can find in Natal region concerning this specific situation. So thanks a lot for listening, and I would like to have some discussions about your experience to share with us about things like that, because they are a little bit all around the coastal area. Plenty of cities in the Northeast Brazil are planning to do this kind of situation, this kind of decisions concerning keep their drainage system arriving on the beach and putting some sand with beach enrichment that costs millions of reais. They are planning about 100 million reais to fulfill the whole 4 kilometers of Ponta Negra Beach in Natal. You can imagine if each city of the Northeast coast decide to do the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Venerando Amaro. Unfortunately, we do not have time for questions, so we'll be moving on to our final presenter today, Dr. Wilson Cabral, a distinguished full professor at the Aeronautics Institute of Technology. Dr. Cabral expertise encompasses water resources management, environmental economics, hydrological modeling, and he will share with us his perspectives on the effects of climate change on cities, infrastructure, and adaptation. Let us welcome Dr. Wilson Cabral.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to present for you some aspects of our research. And as Marian, I wish to step back some issues and step forward for how to get resilience when talking about climate change in cities. Of course, I have no answer for this, at least as entire answer, but I can try. In terms of the step backs, I think about the context when we're talking about climate change in cities in Brazil. So we have some issues, we have some challenges before address this issue, like income distribution. So how income distribution can affect resilience in terms of cities. This is a graph of the population at left and wealth distribution in the right side. And you can see almost 50% of the population in Brazil right now went to work the entire day just to think about what to get to eat at night. So they have nothing. And how can we get resilience without think about distribution? The second one is, for example, sewage treatment. It's always a challenge for us. During the last 40 years, we are trying to face this kind of situation, and our advancement in terms of sewage is very low at this time. So we get most of 40, more than 40% of the population without collect or treatment sewage systems in Brazil. So how people without sanitation, basic sanitation, can face resilience, can face climate change? You have to think about that. About health, and for example, air pollution, that is an important issue for Climápolis project. And even our standards of air pollution. So this is a very interesting tool launched in 1 month ago from the Institute of Energy and Environment. It's an NGO specialized in energy and environment, and they launched this platform just at first to get all data, all official data of air pollution, includes in one single platform, and even to show how far we have in terms of standard from the recommendation of the last recommendation of OMS. OMS, so it's not OMS. The WHO. So this is the numbers for particle material up to 2.5 micrometers. And in one station in São Paulo, here in São Paulo City, in a place, Moca, that is very affected by flood here in São Paulo. So what you can see, it's instead of which our environmental bodies say, it's a good situation for air pollution, it's bad for the OMS standards. The new OMS, WHO standards. So that's good for us. And with this kind of standard, we are, at this moment, permitting the installation of new pollution, new source of pollution, like thermoelectric plants and something like that. And there are some issues that all over the world are facing as well. For example, the microplastics and nanoplastics pollution. They are in all rivers, they are in the air, they are in the food, even they are inside the bodies of our bodies and bodies of animals and even the systems of plants and something. Of course, this kind of pollution are turning us less resilient for the rest of the things, the rest of the challenge in terms of health, in terms of what can affect us. So we have to think about the entire environment when talking about resilience, climate resilience. It's another study from the last year about pharmaceutical compounds in rivers in the entire world. All of the rivers are polluted with certain doses of pharmaceutical compounds. The main are antipyretics, antibiotics, antidepressants, hormones, and something like that. All of them are affecting our health, are affecting our response in terms of resilience for temperature, for even to face, in terms of how strong our body is to face climate change. And this is the result of a study ended in 2015. I think it's the only official study about climate change in Brazil, about projections, official projections. And we have two models treated in this study. You can see at the top the MIROC model, and in the bottom the HADGEM model for two RCP scenarios, 4.5 and 8.5. And you can see as optimistic scenario for Brazil as MIROC model for 2071 to 2100. And this is a pessimistic scenario. But both scenarios are convergent in terms of reducing precipitation for the most part of Brazil, and even too high precipitation in the south of Brazil. So they are convergent in these terms. And this is very, we have to be worried about, because in the optimistic scenario, we are talking about less 20% of precipitation in most parts of Brazil. In the more optimistic scenario. In the pessimistic scenario, you can lose 40 to 45% of precipitation in the most part of Brazil. And this is the current days. This graph figure out this year. You can see this as anomalies of precipitation. And this year, for this region, the region 113 is São Paulo city and macro metropolis. And we have a negative anomaly of precipitation for this region this year. And at current days, this is a very early result from the temperature from Atlantic, Northeast Atlantic. We have the median at the dashed solid black line, and for 2033, the red line, in terms of surface temperature of the Atlantic. And this is maybe days ahead with El Niño. A very pronounced El Niño phenomenon come to us, and when we have El Niño here in Brazil, we lost precipitation in most of parts of Brazil, and you have some extreme events of precipitation in the south. And I think Pedro talk about this kind of, Edmilson talk about this kind of synergy between the urban, the temperature, the growing temperature by climate change, and the formation of urban heat island, and even the precipitation extremes that came from this kind of concentration of heat in urban sites. So the impacts you can see in 2017, 2018, long series of less precipitation or extreme events. And this scene is Rio, from Rio de Janeiro, from the interior, the countryside of the Brazil. And places that we didn't see this kind of event before, like this on the top left. And this is a kind of what I expect to be a forward step This is a result of our study in 2015 about a reconfiguration of a very strong phenomenon of landslide occurring in Caraguatatuba, the north coast of São Paulo, when a very high precipitation during 3 to 4 days, it happened a strong landslide that killed more than 400 people at the time. So we reconfigured it because most of the area affected by that event was occupied again, without any preoccupation about how it can face a new event like that in the future. And we try to simulate, beside the landslide, elevation of sea level, and with a high tide at the same time. So most of the area in blue could be affected and even kill people in Caraguatatuba if this event occur now. So we developed for this, to try to understand the vulnerability of cities, an index, an indicator of vulnerability, and made it for Rio de Janeiro and Santos. So for the two RCP 4.5 and 8.5 with Hadjian model, the British model, we got most of 60% of Rio de Janeiro, the city, in high and super high vulnerability for climate change. In Santos, we did the same, and the situation is worse than. So almost the entire island is in high or super high vulnerability. And even this dot in gray are some critical infrastructures, some places or some bodies that act in case of extreme events, like pumpers or firefighters. And most of them are in vulnerable areas. So in case of an inundation, a flood, or even a landslide, they could be at risk. And this is an example of what I think it's most important in terms of adaptation and climate change, resilient cities. This is a result of vulnerability like those before for the north coast of São Paulo. This is the municipality of São Sebastião. And when you see as orange and orange, strong orange, and yellow as well, are new development areas from the ecological economic zoning, the last one. And we, limited by the solid red line, is from our study that show the most vulnerable areas for climate change. And they are, you can see, they are everyone in the same place. So they are planning to advance in areas of more vulnerability. This study was presented by, invited by the public prosecutors during the discussion of the new plan, the new economic zoning, economic and ecological zoning. And they did nothing at that time. So when you can see these arrows, with high vulnerability and new plans to development, occurred the last tragedy in São Sebastião, killing 64 people with landslides and in flood. So we have to think about integration of public policies. In fact, what is necessary to change this kind of situation? At least critical and analytical thinking, disruptive initiatives. So you have to break the way that you are planning, you are doing, you are advancing in terms of territory, in terms of activities, economic activity as well. And we have to get an agreement in terms of governance for adaptation. We have to get leadership for adaptation. And in terms of institutional integration solutions, all plans at all levels, master plan, adaptation, management of conservation unities, ecological economic zoning, basing plans must be integrated. In fact, we have all of these plans in Brazil. They are not integrated at all. With common agendas and goals, integrated goals as well. Priority for nature-based solutions as green infrastructure or green infrastructures, because it can take some co-benefits more than we can get with the gray infrastructures or something like that. Of course, if applicable, if effective, we have to study about. Compulsory targets for water and energy efficiency in all segments in projects. Strategic information for climate governance accessible and timely available. I can see that study that I told you is official. The only official study in Brazil from 2015 was not accessible anymore. This was achieved. So we can take the results. I have the results because I work for the plan, but it's not accessible anymore. And social participation is preponderant in this kind of discussion. We have to have people, communities, people that will suffer direct the problem inside the discussion, inside the plan. So it's in Portuguese, but I think you can understand. We are talking about this at least for 2 decades. Maybe in 2100 I can solve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cabral. I would like also to thank all the presenters of today and wish a round of applause for them.
Okay.
Olá, bom, por favor, aqueles que ainda não se inscreveram nos 3 roteiros de amanhã, por favor, procurem o pessoal do credenciamento. Vocês devem escolher um dos 3 casos que a gente vai visitar. Sairão 3 vans, uma para cada um dos destinos, um na zona leste da cidade de São Paulo, com foco em vulnerabilidade e drenagem. O outro caso na Zona Norte, com foco também nas questões hidrológicas, e ali vocês vão encontrar questões de corredores ambientais, várias questões ali. E o terceiro caso, que é na região do Morumbi, Paraisópolis, no centro-oeste da cidade de São Paulo, que vai trabalhar principalmente com as questões da Ilha de Calor e dos bens culturais ali na região. Então, por favor, escolham um dos casos e se inscrevam para que a gente possa passar o nome de vocês para o transporte amanhã. Amanhã nossos eventos começam às 8h30, mas teremos mais hoje à tarde, às 2h.
Yeah, 2h30, assim. So, we are... bem, amanhã, então, nós vamos... sorry. Just to say that Murti will participate tomorrow morning because we have technical problems with the connection. So tomorrow morning we start at 8:30 straight. Okay? Thank you very much. Muito obrigado, gente. Acho que foi bem produtivo. Acho que tem uma discussão para a gente fazer a hora que der uma... A gente foi entrando no ritmo, né? Hoje, essa manhã foi boa.